Are you in the HubSpot ecosystem and looking to engage with the industrial and manufacturing space? Are you in the industrial and manufacturing space looking to learn more about how HubSpot can elevate your business? Join Chris and Selim, two HubSpot solution partners with 25 years in the industrial and manufacturing space, as they explore the intersection of these two worlds. Through interviews with experts from both ecosystems, they will attempt to bridge the gap in the largest market we know today.
This podcast is an independent production by Conveying Your Message and is not affiliated with or endorsed by HubSpot. The views, opinions, and positions expressed by the hosts and guests are theirs alone and do not reflect the views, opinions, or positions of HubSpot Incorporated. Any HubSpot employees appearing as guests on this podcast are not representing HubSpot in any official capacity and are sharing their own personal opinions.
Welcome to Sprockets Gears, the unofficial HubSpot industrial podcast.
All right, so much to get into today, Christina. I think we're both pretty hardcore about customer experience, and just wanted to set the table a little bit because coming from inside of these industrial companies, seeing how hard it is for them to, get on board with concepts like customer experience. One of the reasons I've gravitated towards HubSpot and why we became partners right away and where we're committed, because I think it's the easiest. It's a platform that allows for this transition, and facilitates it easier than any other tool that I've seen. Once you have all the understandings and culture and, process and all this change management you got to do. So when we started this conversation on LinkedIn, your post was, customer advocacy doesn't exist in a vacuum. It takes the optimization of all customer touch points and collaboration with teams across sales, marketing, product, and customer success to ensure that the customer has something to truly be a fan of. If you want customers to be a fan of your company and product, you need to ensure that they feel connected throughout the process. My response, basically, my baggage and triggered on behalf of all the people that I tried to work for, tried to do this for, is like, as soon as I heard all customer touch points, I was just like, heard everybody saying, we can't boil the ocean. And I said, can we communicate that second sentence in a way that doesn't scare the crap out of a business leader? Most companies aren't even optimizing for a single touch point, let alone all of them. So before we get into this disconnect, can you break down why all of a sudden we gotta be connected all the time? Why are these connected experiences so important?
So I think that we can rally around this, but we don't rally around this for the customer. Really great case in point is the same people who will say that we can't boil the ocean are the same people who will make sure that everyone has the exact same template for their email signature. Why is that important? But making sure that you're kind to the customer throughout the entire journey, or the tone that you can expect is the same, or doesn't even need to be the same, feels like it's a part of the same company. Great example of this is, let's say that the service of a company is spectacular, absolutely amazing. They will answer any question that you have. They will take care of you. They will be empathetic. They won't talk down to you. It's great. However, let's assume that in order to even get to that spot, sales overpromised and told you things that the product couldn't even do. So it doesn't matter how great support was, you feel lied to because sales didn't tell you the right picture. So what you're expecting is for service to fix what sales got wrong and to do it in such a good way that you forget that sales lied. And there are some people who will grin and bear it, and as long as support can get them through what they need, they'll be like, that's fine, whatever. But it shouldn't be a getting over it situation. It should be, this is what we need to look like. So it doesn't need to be a boiling the ocean situation. I can understand why that would be the immediate pushback. But it needs to be for the same reasons. This is the logo we use. This is our social voice. Here is an entire folder of images that you can use for your LinkedIn background. Why can't we have a customer style guide like we have a brand style guide? Every time you're talking to a customer, no matter what part of the platform you're on, hey, maybe you're on Twitter and you get tagged and you have absolutely no business talking to that person, but they tagged you because they know you work there. That happens to me all the time. How I talk to that customer, I'm customer facing immediately. Whether that is my job, whether that is my responsibility, whatever that looks like. They got tagged, they expect me to pull somebody in, whether I'm fixing it or I'm putting in support or anything. So it could be something like with HubSpot. We have heart. Easy enough to say, like, when we talk to other employees, when we talk to our peers, when we talk to our partners, when we talk to our customers, we need to showcase our heart. And that is our guide as to how we're talking to them, whether we are on sales or service, whether we are behind the scenes and they don't even know we work there, whether we are C-suite or whether we're an intern. It does not matter. We need to be talking to our customers in the same way. So it doesn't matter your function, you still are representing the company. And so what is the expectation of delight, regardless of touch point? And so that's what I'm really asking. We can optimize even further. Like, we could boil the ocean. We absolutely could try to do that. But it's those little things that'll create such an immediate change that don't take a lot. It'll take just as much time as telling everybody, hey, you're onboarding, you need to do your email signature. Why can't you add another part of onboarding to say, this is how we talk to customers, whether it's an email, whether it's on social, whether they did a TikTok about us, doesn't matter. Here is how we respond to them. Here is how we are polite and respectful. And if it's an escalation, what does that look like? If they're praising us, what does that look like? That's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a deck that you add to your onboarding for everybody. You will all, at some point, especially if you live online like I do, you'll come across a customer or a partner. You need to be ready and prepared to say, this is how we talk to them. This is how we want to make them feel.
It's all well and good. And this is where I challenge the boil the ocean in a different way, because I think some of these companies are so far behind that it is a boiling the ocean. Like, you got to figure out how to provide that much heat, because you got a lot of work to do when you haven't digitally transformed yet. But like, why now? Because I think what I'm seeing and what we've experienced is like this shift in understanding. Like, you've always had more than one customer facing department, like, but it was still always up to sales. Like, sales was the customer facing, that's where the experience was crafted for, if crafted at all. And it's like, COVID happened, and then all of a sudden these companies feel like they got to care about it all when they've been doing business for 50 years. Everything's been great. Now all of a sudden the same things aren't working. Like, what's the shift that's made this connection, this like consistency so important?
I would say that social media, and especially how we've all become chronically online since COVID and the pandemic, has absolutely magnified and amplified this. Timely and perfect example. So over this week, there was a TikTok that went viral, has millions of views, and it was about a woman who showed her Stanley Cup in her burned car. And so you can see it, like it's Mad Maxed, like it's torched. And she goes in to the cup holder where the Stanley Cup is, and it's a bit singed, but it's still there. And she
still has ice in it.
Shakes it, and you can hear the ice. So that on its own, we've realized as consumers that because of TikTok and because of other platforms, it's not so much being a creator, but the ability to make sure your voice is heard. So we've had, like in social in the past, there's been this whole thing of like, well, okay, you'll be our social media manager and you'll monitor, and support is absolutely a function of that. Are people asking for help? Do people have questions? Do they have a complaint? Whatever. We are moving beyond that. Now we have the consumer as a creator. So we have UGC, we have video that's very easy to make. They just need their phone, no budget at all. Actually, the trashier and like more raw it looks, the better and more believable it is. So consumers as creators is absolutely a thing now. And in a way, there's an opportunity for us to, I don't know how to say this nicely, but to bully. It's used for good and for bad, to bully the things that we want. Great case in point is Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers, they did a tax write-off on the Coyote versus Acme movie that was supposed to come out. It was doing great. There were like all of the test audiences were giving it in the 90s out of 100. So it's not a matter of quality. They just decided like, it's not worth it to us. We're going to shelve it. The internet immediately reacted. And in addition to that, directors and other creators who were having meetings with Warner Brothers canceled them. And so within days, you have Warner Brothers now saying, fine, we'll open it up to distributors to see if anyone wants to buy the rights so they can distribute it. So just as in the Stanley case, you have an opportunity for a product to get immediate, like, they don't need a Black Friday ad. They don't need a Christmas ad at all. That video is going to give them all of the holiday sales they could ever want. And that's not even counting how they responded. So they responded back and could have, like, literally could have put in the comments, thanks for this. We can't wait to send you more Stanleys. Or could have said, like, hey, we'd love to replace your car. Didn't even do that. What they did was they had the president of the company do just as raw of a video. It's just him talking with some Stanleys in the background. Immediately led with empathy to say, like, we're just glad you're safe. So immediately acknowledged, like, that's a horrifying event. Like, I'm not going to go straight into, like, you get a new car. Like, he could have sounded like a game show host very easily. And he didn't. The whole response to that video by the president is going to be studied in PR classes because he did everything he needed to do. He was authentic. He acknowledged that it was tough. He did not immediately jump in with the, we want to get you a new car. He could have immediately done that and been like, all right, we're going to win all the good vibes this week. Instead, he acknowledged that that was stressful. He came across incredibly empathetic. Then he was appreciative for the video and acknowledged the value of it and how it showcased how good the product was. And then he said that they would give him Stanleys. He acknowledged the comments from the other people on the video. So he's basically saying, I see all of you. I've read the comments without saying I read the comments. Said, we don't normally do this, and we probably won't again. That was a nice little slide by legal.
Yeah.
Beautiful slide by legal. And then said, we'd like to do that for you. And then said, like, all right, check your DMs. It was the most flawless but authentic execution I've ever seen. And he did it in the way that they did it to him. So they say, like, react to people the way, like, go to where people are. They could have done, like, an ad. They could have done a one-page ad in the New York Times. But that customer did it on TikTok, so they did it on TikTok. And it was beautiful. PR masterclass. And it was authentic and believable. And so you get to highlight, and you're also amplifying a customer who loved your product. So it's an ad within an ad. And that's how it's done. But all of that, like, you can tell they care about their customers because of how that played out. Because other people's responses were not, well, I have a Stanley and they suck, or I have a Stanley and their return policy is bad. It's very much like Chewy. Whenever there's good press, you have consumers add to the conversation and share their good stories. So that further showcases this is authentic. Because otherwise, if they treated their consumers like trash the rest of the time, then you would have a surge of people who couldn't wait to tell you this is a singular case. This is not how they normally treat people. And that is not what's happening. And all of that comes down to, and this is where the problem is with the pushback, you have to care about your consumers. Because if you actually care, so many good ideas and good things are just taking care of people. Just what is the right thing to do? And if you don't care about people, then it does come across as like manufactured and icky, and this is clearly like planned. It's just like good marketing shouldn't look like marketing. Good PR should look like you're doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And that's honestly what it comes down to, because people can tell when you care. And for all the people who are saying how great you are, if you're not really taking care of people, that comment section is going to be filled with people who can't wait to set the record straight and say, like, my experience was completely different. But it is that we're all living on our phones, and we have been since 2020.
I love that you're talking about companies not caring. In the industrial manufacturing space, it's all these companies that 50 years ago, 60 years ago, did a technological breakthrough and got a product that's so unique that they cornered a market. And you see them 60 years later, they're still coasting on that success and knowing that nobody else can provide the product or the service they provide. And as a result, they stopped caring. They stopped caring about the customer experience. They stopped caring about how their customers are trying to buy their products or services. And that is kind of all that we do, me and Chris here at Conveying Your Message. Like we're trying to remedy that. We're trying to remedy people not caring. So my question to you is, when faced with that, what is the first step you try to do to get people to shift from not caring to actually caring before it comes to the point where, okay, the company is losing revenue and we're nearing, default?
So at the end of the day, leadership is going to listen to those moves, those signals of, if everything is fine as is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. You have to prove that it's broken, and you have to prove that there is demand for better. And so one of the things to do is do customer research, do social listening. What are the biggest concerns? What are the problems? Because you can't just go in the door and be like, it's broken. Congrats. What's broken? How is it broken? How does it impact the customer? Would they ever leave even if it is broken? Or are they just going to send us an angry email once a year, but we're still getting that check, so we're fine? You have to be able to singularly be able to identify what's broken, how it's broken, and then what are the ramifications for this? Like, look, here come the consequences. And the thing is that especially with AI on the market, where we have an opportunity for literally anyone with an idea to be able to create in ways that they never could have previously. Yes, you might have cornered the market 50, 60 years ago, but in a market where AI exists to be that ultimate leveler, you are catering. You might have a blue ocean now, but people will see you as a target very quickly because AI can make the difference in the IP or whatever it was that made you innovative before. But what you can still do to counter that is to be unapologetically human, and taking care of other people and being empathetic is an incredibly human practice. So in a world where AI can help you build anything, treating people like humans and being empathetic is where you can win. And so they need to know that 50, 60 years ago, you might have been it. But look at how we talk about Carnegie now. We still revere him. We still revere what he built. But he is not making the world today. Just because you got to the top of the mountain doesn't mean you stay there. And there's more technology, there's more free thinkers, there's more opportunities to connect. The world feels like it's getting smaller and smaller every day. It's how you create those micro moments. It's how you take care of people. It's how more people find out about you without you spending a penny because they want other people to be taken care of. That's the currency. That's the real business currency, is how you treat people.
Right. And that's why it's so interesting. And while there are some that have lost track of that initial, approach that made them successful, let's assume positive intent for a second. And because I do believe these leaders that got good at taking care of customers through their product, through responsive service, it's hard work being there at the end of the phone every time. And how many have you heard that's oh, we're not going to an automated phone system. That's the worst thing ever. They need to hear us, right? But they're just so far away from the front lines now where they might feel that there's more calls happening, but they're so disconnected. So it's, at the same time they say, Oh, we take care of our customers. Like that's the most important thing, right? We take care of our teams, right? So, and they're not feeling any of the consequences, right? Because some of these spaces, just nobody has popped up yet, or there's just not enough people, and there's so much demand, and these people are getting buried in revenue. And so let's talk to that no consequence leader. How do we break through? Like if we hear him saying that, we're trying to connect it to this customer experience we're seeing every day, but it's not hitting the bottom line yet. How do we talk to him or her before it hits the bottom line? Because for me, as we start this business, I'm not convinced that we can create proactivity, right? Because that's the scary part. Like a lot of times, so many, and they're lucky to be in this position. Like they don't really have to act until something bad happens. What can we do to try and get them to move before that?
So I would challenge their definitions just the way that you would for any other like discovery call. So if you're working with, let's say that you're bringing on a new customer for your agency, one of the questions you're going to ask is like, what are your goals? So like, what does success look like to you? I would ask the exact same question, but in terms of how they take care of their customers. So you said, what if they're best intent? We take care of our customers. What does that look like to you? You say that you take care of them. What does that mean? Does it mean that there's going to be a human on the phone? Does it mean that we have like a certain hour SLA? Like, what does that actually look like? Because I can go on Twitter now, and like you said too, like we take care of our people. I could go on Twitter and probably scroll a few times, and then I'll find a meme about someone making fun of a pizza party. We take care of our employees, and it's a pizza party. So we know that those pain points exist. We know that that's clearly a thing. It's normalized to the point of memes. So we know that's a thing. I would challenge them just the way that you would challenge them on a call for something else. What is success? You want us to join? You want us to help you? What are you wanting to see in order to deem that the work that we're doing is success? Is it a certain number of leads? Is it a certain number of productivity, time savings, money savings? What is it? What is it looking like to you? Same challenge. What does that look like to you? When you say that you take care of them, what does that actually mean? What does that manifest itself as? Because you could have two CEOs saying the exact same thing, and what success looks like to each of them is very, very different. Very different. It could be like, hey, we do price cuts when we can, or we have a really low retention rate, so we must be taking care of them. Not necessarily. If you don't have any competition, there's nowhere to go. So that isn't necessarily indicative of them being taken care of. There's no alternative. And so trying to figure out what does that definition of success look like, and then drill down into that. Okay, so you have human people that do the calls. Amazing. Love that for you. What happens? Do you record those calls? What happens to the feedback? Do you regularly do audits to make sure that those people are being taken care of? Do you do satisfaction surveys? And they could be like, we do surveys all the time, and the people who do it love us. Well, that might be because the only people who have the time to do the survey are the people who are really happy. Or it's the people who are really pissed off, and they're the only people who want to take the time. And it's going to take like 10 minutes to go through this like thing that was made in the 80s. And I got to click this right button in order to even get to the next question. It really comes down to what does that process look like? And also just what does the customer journey look like too? Because the customer journey 20 years ago and the customer journey nowadays, very, very different. Like the customer journey like 20 years ago, it feels like a very clear path. Like maybe we have a website, maybe we don't. Maybe they'll just call us or find us in the yellow pages. Now the customer journey looks like someone who is in the woods with a blindfold on and is just walking around aimlessly and might touch different trees, might go into this pasture over here, might hit a email, might have seen your CEO on a TED Talk, might have like, they can find you all sorts of ways, and there is no singular path. So that's why you need to look at all of the touch points to be like, what do we find? And people, the same people who will want to make sure that they're high ranking for certain posts or for certain keywords are the same people who won't Google their own name to see if there's anyone talking trash about them. Like they want the keyword, but they're not going to look to see like how people are talking about them. And also if like you have ChatGPT and you've been using it and you're an SEO or you're in customer care at all, if you haven't already, and you really should have by now, but you need to ask ChatGPT what it knows about your company. What do people say about your company? Because if that information is incorrect, you've got work to do. You've got a lot of work to do, because people are asking ChatGPT about your product. They are asking ChatGPT about your company. So you need to know what ChatGPT is saying about you. And I know there's people who are going to listen to this who have not done that yet.
Many will. So I like what you said about, they're wandering through the woods. Maybe they find the TED Talk. Mm-hmm. They only find it if it's there to find.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, you've been talking about AI, and I heard a podcast the other day talking about, okay, we're like the next transformation is the AI transformation. And I heard that, and of course it makes sense. But I'm thinking about these companies that haven't even digitally transformed yet. And they're like 2 generations behind. So let's say we've gotten the point across. Mm-hmm. And and these are literally companies that have been doing things a certain way. It's been successful. They may never had a full-time marketer. Like, where do they start?
I think it comes down to doing a full audit. Like, you need to look at what currently exists, and you need to think about like what's working the best. So like, let's say that processes have changed. You should be looking every year, pattern over year, to see what are the sources of most of our renewals, most of our new leads. What does that look like? So what's working for us, what's not working for us? And if they have that on autopilot, then they won't have that information. We just do stuff. This is what we do. And so you need to figure out what's working for you, what's probably taking up the most time and budget, but isn't necessarily. Like, there's a lot of ooh shiny that sounds really cool. And in a board meeting, it sounds really awesome. But does it drive anything? And if it does drive something, does it drive it short term or does it drive it long term? Do we see like immediate conversions, or do we just have to sit for 6 months? And neither's a bad thing, but you need to be aware of like, we're going to play this card and it's totally going to work, but we're not going to see results tomorrow. We might see it like next quarter, and that's fine, but we need to like be prepared for there to be a little while for that to cook. Then you need to look at all of the things from an optimization eye. Which of these things work really well, but they could take less time, or they could take less resources, or maybe it's just really manual. Like, is there anything like, I hate this. Can you take any of this off my plate? Can you make any of this easier? And then going through to see like, does AI solve any of those asks? Or are there any tools that we could add to the tech stack to do that? So like Zapier does a really great job of connecting the pieces. So you're like, I don't even know if AI could do this, but I just need my tech stack to talk to each other so that I don't have to put it in 10 different places. I put it in one and it goes to everything that I need. They can play telephone and get what I need. And so what works, what doesn't work? What could work better? What does that look like? Where does AI play a role? And then making that list based on priority. Like, what's going to take the least amount of work but can make the most impact?
Seems straightforward.
I've been listening to Christina talk, and I keep coming back to this idea that every time we start talking about improving customer experience and we start digging into processes, at some point there's someone who stands up and says, okay, now this is turning into an IT conversation. And then they take either, okay, that's not a customer experience conversation anymore, it's a tech stack conversation, or they turn back and say, let's not shift the tech stack, let's just focus on what we can do without touching the tech stack.
You know what I hear when you say that?
What?
I hear we have silos.
Yes, exactly. And even if these, the funniest part I've seen is there's even silos inside of HubSpot. Like the marketing hub is operating on its own. the sales hub is operating on its own, the service hub is operating on its own. And when at Inbound 23, like we heard customer platform and everybody having the visibility about the same customer journey, me and Chris, we were excited. But then we came back and started having these conversations, and we've seen it even in the partner ecosystem where no, it's just like we're focused on sales or we're focused on Marketing Hub. I don't know how we can break through this siloing. I would love to hear your thoughts about it.
Well, I just want to say, like, that's part of the reason why we're doing this podcast too, right? Like we are so bought into the customer platform idea, because that's really what these companies have been missing in terms of something that helps them break down the silos, because change managing that breakdown by yourself is crazy. And I've found so much value in the guerrilla tactics behind just putting HubSpot at the right spot. It's like, oh, guess we got to be transparent now. That's the only way this is going to work. But there's a lot to learn into how to deliver a full platform. And I think what you mentioned and what we find about a lot of these conversations is starting with, the mapping, like understand current state. And for me, and, I've never been in the C-suite. I've never been able to lead the company from that perspective. It seems like a no-brainer to understand where you're at right now if you want to do something. Why is that so hard? Why is that, let's take a look at the current state? Why is that missed?
No one wants to do the work, and they'd rather rely on their intuition, because it's hard to say. I think you can tie a lot of problems to ego. Why do you have silos? Everyone wants credit. Why is attribution so difficult for many teams? It's because everyone wants to be the KPI to say, like, I was the person who got that deal, when the truth is, in that customer journey, maybe 10 different departments touched them. Why can't we all win together? Like, a win is a win, And so I think that you're seeing that with the team too. This is turning into a tech conversation. I'm not going to be the one that gets credit for this if you fix the problem, because now you're talking about someone else's work. Why can't we bring them in and just win? Like, why can't the brand be the one that wins? Like, that's what I really do love about HubSpot is I collaborate with a lot of internal teams. I will talk to anyone who will answer an email or a Slack message from me. Like, I want to talk to you. How can I help you do your job better? How can you help provide opportunities for our advocates? How can I share the feedback that our customers and partners are giving us so that you can make your product better? That's how you win. Because there are people who are working on things that could unlock opportunities and doors for you, but you don't know if you don't know. And if you're siloed, you only know what you're winning and losing on. And in order to get that real first picture and to look at everything, you have to actually look at everything. And it's so much easier to be like, my program's fine. I don't need to look at anything. Audit it? Why would I audit? It's amazing. You gotta look, and you gotta look at everything. Because you could have a great program, but maybe there's a piece missing. Like, maybe you do really fantastic surveys and you have really good NPS scores, but then you don't share any of the feedback from those surveys to product so that they can actually action the people who are happy, but they still want something. Like, I love your product, but it would be really cool if you had this. We make a point to share that feedback. It doesn't necessarily impact me, but it could. Let's say that product gets an idea for something that one of our advocates has wanted forever, and then we ship it. That advocate feels heard. They also have a sense of ownership because they feel like this got shipped after I asked for it. So clearly I'm a part of that process, and this now exists because I requested it. That's really powerful. But it comes down to those things, and I think a lot of it is ego. You have sales. We want the leads. We want to prove that we got the revenue in. Marketing leads, like MQLs. At the end of the day, like, revenue is revenue. When you hear companies talking about all the money they're bringing in, they're not cutting it down in the thing and be like, all right, now let's actually look at service. How much did service bring in? All right, let's look at sales. It's a number. It's one number because it's the company. And so I would challenge your customers and your clients to remember that. It's the brand that needs to win. And if you're optimizing all the organizations and all the groups and departments to work better together, everyone wins because it's the brand as a whole that wins.
Chris, I know you're very passionate about, restructuring around the customer experience, and I know you have a lot of thoughts about that.
I do. Because it's funny you mentioned not breaking up the revenue reporting and focus. And some of these companies are, and in fact, in that, like they kind of see the market leader, focusing on a very specific revenue stream. And a lot of times in manufacturing, it happens to be service, except the market leader is doing it in a way where they're just gouging because they can, right? So then you try to, you want them to emulate so much, but then they just emulate the stuff like this. It's just crazy. But then they say, okay, service leader, we need you to go from 20% of the revenue to 30% of the revenue. But you've never done sales in your life. Like, in that kind of stuff, a lot of this structure, and that's where it would be great. Like, drawing the line to the revenue teams, to the one team mindset. Like, when we don't have a customer success team, we don't even understand that phrase. RevOps is brand new, customer experience, sales enablement, all these things are brand new, and we try to give out these hats in these same departments of marketing, sales. So that's what seems to me like.
They're all bridges. That's all it is. They're all words that mean you're a bridge.
Right.
So like if you go to the service team and you say, all right, you're 20% of revenue, and now you need you to be 30% of revenue. Without giving them any resources or without giving them anything else, you've done two things. You've set them up for failure, and you've also made them oppositional to sales. Because now sales is going to see them as a threat. Because if service does well, why do we have jobs? And if they do poorly, you relish, you now celebrate that like your team partners didn't do what they needed to do, which means as the brand didn't do what it needed to do. Instead, what you could do is have sales and services work together. Services, what are you seeing? Like, let's say services is the best opportunity for upselling. All right, sales, what are the biggest objections do you see when people have been upsold in the past? What were the biggest questions that they tended to ask? What were the roadblocks that you continued to see? What did you need to provide to them in order to make sure that they were able to feel secure? Is it a case study? Is it training, additional training? What does it look like? Because sales has been in that trench, and they've got war stories. Pick their brain. What was successful for you? What worked for you in the past? How can we use that knowledge to improve? And then because you trained us and because we worked together, yes, I got to what I needed to be, but I got to where I needed to be because we collaborated, because we were a bridge. And in my personal opinion, sales enablement, RevOps, all of these things, they're bridges. If we work together, then we don't have to duplicate labor. We can help each other optimize. I can do what I really love, you can do what you really love, and we can come together on the stuff that needs both of us, and we win. That's what all of those terms mean to me. They're bridges.
What do you recommend then? Because one of the ways that I try to think about it, and I feel like it should be, I've actually seen it, like aha moments get created when you just use different words. And an example is like, there's an order management team, right? And, but when you use the phrase order management, that is very internally focused. We are doing what we need to do to send out an invoice and get paid, right? But what that team is actually doing is customer success, right? Like, why don't we just call it that? And now it's got customer in the name. It's got success in the name. And that's where just like that's why I think what we call stuff should matter. And it does matter for the people on the ground. I've seen it switch, like it's somebody's face, like, oh, like that is everything I do. I am a customer success person. It doesn't have to be a whole new department that comes and takes my job. Like, it's actually what I'm doing. And now we're like positively, proactively doing what I'm doing every day instead of reacting. So when, like, let's say you do the current state audit, because that's where we get with these things, right? These transitions, these transformations are at the core. It's values, it's org structure, it's job descriptions. If you're setting yourself up and you want to set up your team for success. But that's when, like, I get why it feels like boiling the ocean, because that is like the foundational stuff of the business that you got to re-pour the foundation. Most people just would rather do anything else than that.
Yeah.
Have you seen anybody take it that far, or maybe put that as like a 3 to 5 year, vision, and then let's start with this job role, then this job role? Like, how do you build the bridges, whether it's labels, whether it's, plans? How do you bring people together from the silos?
I think you need to be able to prove why it's mutually beneficial. If it feels one directional, like, hey, I'm going to put you with this team and you're basically going to suck all the knowledge from that team, and it can very easily feel like collaboration can feel very quickly like I have to train them so they can replace me. And in this economic environment, you need to be very, very attuned to that, because no one feels safe. So you need to be able to have that messaging ready of, I want these two teams to work together. Here is what they can learn from each other, and here is what we hope for them to be able to gain by collaborating. But that's not what usually happens. What usually happens is, hey, we're going to do a meeting next week, and I'm going to put y'all all together in some room, and then we're going to talk about some stuff, and I'll have an agenda doc, and we're just going to chat. And it's this illusion of vision without an actual vision, which is difficult. And so you give just enough context to know why you're in the room, but you don't know what you're going to do but what happens once I leave this room? How am I going to be bettered by being in this room, doing these talks, brainstorming, and then leaving to go on and do other things? The other thing is, the longer I'm in business, the more everything is foundational. Marketing, regardless of the ad spend or the social media tools or the platforms or customer behaviors, the 4 Ps and marketing foundations, it doesn't change. Customer care, same thing. The distribution points might change, but it's still foundationally that. People still want to be heard. Still, people want to learn from each other. People want to be entertained. A lot of the foundational stuff, word of mouth, it's the one trend that isn't a trend. It continues to find new microphones in different places, but word of mouth is never going to go out of style. It's always going to be an incredibly powerful tool, regardless of who you are, regardless of where in the world you are. The customer is always going to have an opinion, and they cannot wait to share it, good, bad, ugly. It's always going to be a thing. The problem with that is shinies. What we call RevOps today will be called something completely different in 10 years, because that is how we are. We love to fix the things that aren't broken. We love to rename things and make them have shiny titles instead of just going back to the basics. And going back to the basics is a lot of work, and no one wants to do it. They'd rather change the logo, We'll just make it Helvetica. See, we fixed it.
I have some personal pain around that, which is I'm of the mind that sometimes you do need to create a new hat and take pieces of one job, pieces of another job, and put them under that new hat. Case in point, being the marketer, a lot of the time HubSpot's entry point to a company is through Marketing Hub. So the marketing team ends up running HubSpot for marketing. I've been in a couple of marketing ops roles, and those roles immediately start morphing into, RevOps roles, but it's never called that. Yeah. So when you're in situations where you're trying to advise sales teams on how they should be using HubSpot, or trying to advise service teams how they should be using HubSpot, or more recently with Commerce Hub, trying to talk with accounting and like invoicing, like we should be doing this, we should be quoting out of HubSpot. At that point, you notice people just stop talking, look at you, and it's like, you're marketing. What do you have to do with this?
Yeah. And that goes but that's territory. It all comes down to territory. Yeah. This is what I own. You don't own this, so why are you talking to me about this? This is my world, not yours.
Yeah.
It all goes back to ego. And I do agree that like new hats are, as people adapt and as like needs adapt and as technology makes it possible for people to do the job of like what 5 people did 15, 20 years ago, new hats are needed. I'm just not a fan of new hats for the sake of new hats. And if you do create a new hat, you need to create the education to go along with that. Why is this needed? What does this actually mean? How is it different? What does that innovation look like across the thing? Because a lot of times what happens is they just say that word of the new hat like over and over and over again. And like if I say it enough times, it'll stick and they'll understand what I'm saying. No, you're just repeating yourself. And I have no idea what that means, you know?
Yeah.
So it has to be coupled with the education. And I will say with RevOps, and I've seen the HubSpot community do this, which I really love, is that they get the drumbeat and they are educating people on like, how is this different? What does this need to look like? Why is this new hat, as you say, impactful and necessary? And how can it like really create change and positive impact? And so I've really loved to be able to see that, but without that drumbeat and without that educational perspective, it just looks like you're saying something else to me. Like you've just renamed it and I'm like, I guess this is what we call it now instead of all that stuff. But that's really the piece that you need that socialization and educational piece of the why. Like, why are we even doing this?
Yeah. I have a follow-up question, Chris.
Yep.
With the advent of remote work and work from home, I've faced challenges doing that, socialization remotely. How do you feel about leaders saying like, well, that specific kind of socialization is necessary to be in office? And do you believe you can do it successfully remotely? I know HubSpot is mostly remote people across the world, so I know it could be possible, but talk us through it.
I think if a company wants to be successful remotely, it can be. I think HubSpot is a great example of this. It provides the resources necessary so that we can socialize and be productive and do what we need remotely. However, if you're a company that wants people to be in office, you can absolutely structure it so that there are advantages only to be in an office, and in order to do what you need, you have to be there in person. It really is if they wanted to, they would, and HubSpot does. And so we're given the tools to be able to connect in person when it's opportune and when it makes sense, but then we're also given opportunities, the resources necessary to be able to communicate and jump on calls and be able to talk with multiple teams across the world to make sure that we're getting what we need. And they want you to be remote. It is absolutely possible and can be done.
Man, we could go we could go another hour for sure. We had so much planned to talk about.
Let's do part 2.
Yeah, no, we're down. I did want to. You touched on something that I think is not talked about a lot, and is part of the reason why we get to this point where shiny object syndrome is allowed to persist, and it puts companies in this positions. And it's the reason why, we're 30 years into CRM and we still have companies not even using CRM. You mentioned the education piece and how the ecosystem has kind of latched onto that when it comes to RevOps. I think it's important for the whole ecosystem and HubSpot to definitely understand that responsibility. Like if you're going to sell customer platform, it's on us to educate the market properly.
And I think that's why HubSpot Academy is such a gem. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people who've come into the ecosystem because of HubSpot Academy. The professors are second to none, and they come with you can tell that they care and they want you to learn and they want you to be successful about this. And I love that that's an entry point for so many people because it does kind of set you off on the right track. We want you to leave knowing more. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that kind of is the flag bearer for us. And I think that that's also why so many partners and customers want to create content, because we've kind of led by example through Academy.
Right.
In
Yeah.
fact, Chris is like the poster child of
One of many. So many HubSpot origin stories start out with the Academy. I mean, for me, it was 2017. I just, we just had our first down year, and I was using Salesforce. So I was in that ecosystem, but I got buy-in for marketing automation. I was learning that from Marketo. So HubSpot, I was in that net, so I wasn't even aware of HubSpot. Signed up with Marketo. It wasn't going well the first 30 days, the onboarding, but in that time I wanted to learn. So I jumped on the HubSpot Academy, and it wasn't going well enough that on day 27 of my 30-day onboarding, I check out the HubSpot pricing page and get a call within 7 minutes, and then get out of that contract. And now that free content is, if things go well with this agency, like millions of dollars of revenue from free content.
Yep.
Right. And that is why, they've done such a good job there. And it's a challenge for the whole ecosystem, just because they have moved so fast in the past couple of years. Yeah. I think it's up for it, but I do believe like this is for me, it's the perfect product at the right moment in time, built the right way, that really the ecosystem in HubSpot itself is the only thing that could get in the way. I don't think they're going to. But I think it's helpful for us to understand why the CRM adoption rates and just the situation inside of these companies is the way it is. And that's where just the market leaders and the people who kind of hold this flag have the responsibility of educating. And I think before HubSpot, that was not always front of mind for the market leader. And that's why we still got people using spreadsheets, right? So
well, I think there's also, I agree with everything that you said, and I'm so glad that you're a fan of the product. We appreciate that. We really do. I would just add that there's so much human behavior behind choice and also lack of choice. There's a lot of people who will use that spreadsheet until the end of, like, no matter what educational piece is put in front of them, because they are change averse. And there are people who will never do anything else because it's not even because they enjoy the experience, they don't want to have to learn something new. And that singularly is it. Like, that's the beginning and end. And so there are some objections that are so corely psychologically rooted that it has nothing to do with the product and has nothing to do with the features. It has to do with the fact that I literally don't want to do anything different. It's not that it's not broken. I'll agree all day. I don't want to try anything new. And I do think that that's where AI comes in. And I think the utilization of AI with HubSpot is that opportunity to make that change feel less risk averse, because you essentially kind of have a guide. I don't want to learn how to do this, but with AI, I can just ask it questions and it's going to give me what I need instead of me having to look through different menus and see what that looks like. So I do think that the utilization of AI within HubSpot is going to help people. But that being said, there's still people who literally are rejecting AI for the exact same reasons. I don't want to have anything new in my life. No other reason than that.
Yep. Always comes back to change management, values, culture.
Yep.
All that stuff. I do think it makes sense to have a part 2 here, if you're willing.
We can totally do that. Yeah.
Because I do want to show the light at the end of the tunnel, what that looks like, and when you do this successfully. Because we've seen it. That's why we stand behind this tool. The way it brings things together, and those things a lot of times are the people inside of an organization. It's just a beautiful thing when it's working. Yeah. So I'd love to get into that with you in a part
Okay.
2.
That sounds great.
One thing I wanted to highlight. The first time I heard of Christina was back in 2020. I was doing LinkedIn, and I heard a lot of marketers saying, like, Twitter is where it's at. We're not going to mention current state of Twitter, but I stumbled upon a post asking, if you have less than 1,000 followers and work in marketing in some capacity, introduce yourself to marketing Twitter. I have to say that it was amazing watching real time all the engagement happening on the post, and I made the mistake of commenting on that post, and notifications wouldn't stop because it grew from hundreds to 500 to 1,000, and like if you look at the post right now, it's sitting at almost 4,000 comments, almost 1,000 retweets, like, and it just created something amazing. And I would love if you can give us like a behind the scene like peek on how that came to be, and if it had any material impact on your general marketing career.
Yeah. So I hate to be boring, but I was sitting outside of Starbucks waiting for my morning coffee, and I spend way too much time on Twitter. Like it is a problem. If there is like an outpatient service for like being chronically online, I'm like the poster child for need. But I see so many people, especially in the marketing world, we are paid to be knowledgeable and to be understanding and to get human psychology and to know what's going to make people click. But we are also the most self-deprecating and the most self-doubting people I have ever worked with, myself included. And we self-reject every chance we get. I find some of the most brilliant people, most brilliant marketers I've ever worked with are not these 100,000 follower accounts. I'm not saying all thought leaders are bad or don't know what they're talking about, but I will categorically say the most brilliant people I've ever worked with, you would never judge it based off of their follower count on social. So I don't think that they equate. But those same people are judged that way. If they try to say something really important in a conversation on Twitter or anywhere really, there are people who will judge them not based on what they said, but based off of how many followers they have. Well, like, you're a nobody, you only have 200 followers. Like, why are you even saying anything? And that person could be running like a department at Disney. And if they don't have it in their profile, you wouldn't know. And so I find that people need a door. We were talking about bridges earlier. I'm just going to be the architecture girl. Just as many people need a bridge as they need a door. They know that they could go in there and kill it. They know that they have a very clear POV that is very helpful and insightful and could actually help the conversation. But they self-reject because they are afraid that if they say something, they're going to get ridiculed because they don't have a certain follower count. And so it usually does tend to be that 1,000, which is why I picked that. So I just went, while I was waiting in my car at Starbucks, was like, you know what? Hopefully this will help people connect so that they can not feel worthless based off of their follower count. So I was like, if you have less than 1,000, introduce yourself. And even with that, there were still people like, well, I do social media. Is that marketing? Yes, honey, please come in. Like, one of us. Or, hey, I do advertising. Does that count? Yes, one of us. So even with that door, people are still like, can I still self-reject if I am I this niche? And so it blew up. I still have people who respond to it. I still have people who connect to it and stuff like that. And it's been really beautiful. I think I kind of hold on. I'm never going to get rid of that pinned tweet because it reminds me that Twitter can be just a beautiful, beautiful place. And I still think it has that capacity no matter what happens. Because for everyone that wants to go on social and make the world worse and to spew hatred, there are just as many people who want to desperately connect and make the world better. And so I want to connect to those people. How can I make those people louder? And so it's been really beautiful. I had agreed to join HubSpot before that went viral, literally a couple weeks before it went viral. So I can't say that it gave me that. But it has connected me with some of the most amazing people I've ever met. I feel I feel like I have met some of the most brilliant people, connected with some of the most I could rattle off names of people that I should not know who I am, I'm a complete nobody, and they will DM me and we will talk. And so I have made a world of friends, which is, I think, incredibly grateful and leads to other opportunities. But since then, I've written for Adweek, and I've had opportunities to go at different conferences and speak. And I've been called the godmother of marketing Twitter, because I try to be as protective as I can. I'm a bit of a protective person. So it's like a little piece of my life where I can say, like, I know that I did good here. I know that this worked out, and I know people who've gotten jobs from it. I know people who've connected with it. I know people who've gotten in relationships with people from people that they met. Like, it's made the world a smaller place in a really lovely way. So yeah, it's nice.
It makes you feel good seeing that such a simple post can make such an impact on a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
Where can we find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Christina Garnett. I'm there. You can find me on Twitter. I don't call it X, at that Christina G. And a lot of my work sits at the intersection of social media, community, and brand love. So if you were interested in learning more about fandom, what that looks like, I have a podcast and newsletter called Fan of the Fans. You can find it on Spotify and Substack.
And we'll make sure to include all of those links anywhere in the description. Thank you again, Christina, for being here.
Absolutely.